Hey everyone, and welcome to ELI on Air. I'm really thrilled to welcome everyone to this very special edition that we're doing in collaboration with Joshua Venture Group, featuring their amazing fellows and the work that they've been doing all over the world. My name is Miriam Berceau, and I'm the program director of ELI Talks. ELI Talks is a series of inspired Jewish ideas all about engagement, literacy, and identity. And every week we host this interactive broadcast featuring interesting folks from across the Jewish spectrum talking about engagement, literacy, and identity from all kinds of different perspectives. And this week I'm really thrilled to be sitting here with one of my musical heroes and a great Jewish educator, Mr. Matt Barr of Bible Raps, who's going to be laying it down for us about musical Midrash and biblical beats and all kinds of good stuff. We've also got on deck Esther Kay, who's going to be helping us out with the conversation itself. Throughout the entire broadcast, we'll be taking your questions right here through the video and also on Twitter using hashtag EliTalks. So feel free to send in any questions, and they may just get answered in a wrap. That wouldn't be such a bad thing, right? So with that, I am going to hide Miss Esther. You'll see her later on in the broadcast. And we'll get started with Matt Barr. Thanks so much for joining us today, Matt.
Thank you for having me. I think as a rapper, let's just go ahead and get the shout-outs out of the way. Shout out to ELI Talk, shout out to JVG, shout out to ROY, shout out to Sean, shout out to Emmanuel, shout out to Philly Fed for helping with the gigs. Okay, we can move on now.
Amazing. It's all about the hustle. I hear you. So we called this session Musical Midrash and Biblical Beats. Can you tell me a little bit about this word Midrash and what it means to you, right, and what role you think it plays in the context of understanding and appreciating Torah?
There's two, traditionally speaking, there's two types of Midrash. There's Midrash Halacha and Midrash Agadah. And basically it's a tool, a literary tool that the rabbis use over the past 2,000 years to elucidate more out of the Torah than first meets the eye. So whether that be making law, if you need to know, what exactly you can't do on Shabbat, and it doesn't say that exactly, then you have to use some kind of literary tools to look what's some of the hints given in the Torah and kind of elucidate them, and that makes halakha. That's Midrash Halakha. And that's pretty much closed at this point. And then there's Midrash Agadah, which isn't making Torah law. It's kind of being a bridge to the glory of the text, to the values of the text, by adding some background stories that are hinted at in the text and reordering kind of lines from the Torah, Tanakh in general, into kind of a new story that might add another layer to some of the characters or some of the stories that both articulate kind of the wisdom and values of tradition, as well as add kind of the 2 cents from a contemporary voice. And with Midrash Agadah, the MO is using the vernacular of the day. So like if it was 12th century Spain, the Midrashists would use Arabic poetry because that was like the hot genre, and now these days, at least for the 35 and under, hip hop is the dominant culture, and so that's the vernacular for a lot of people, and so it seems like, as a midrashist, a natural genre to use to kind of explore the text and elucidate things that will make it relevant to today's people.
I love this phrase you use, being a bridge to the glory of the text. So, and I think that's really beautiful, but at the same time, it kind of implies that it's not, everything about the text isn't right there on the surface. Like, it's not where that glory is hidden, right?
Well, yeah, I don't really believe in, personally speaking, believe in studying the Bible without doing so through the rabbi's eyes. And so what makes, there's the written tradition, which is the Tanakh, and then there's the oral tradition, which is expansive and allowed to change or at least evolve as kind of each generation gets hip to like how to make compassion and justice more manifest more on earth. They kind of do little literary tricks to make it say, oh, the whole time that was in the Torah, when in fact it's just a new value that the Jewish people have realized is something that they need to embed in their foundation. So they have to kind of use these literary kind of tools to elucidate it or tease it out of the text, whether it was there. I don't think the rabbis would have, Abraham be in the Beit Midrash and he'd have side curls, which isn't the first read. So they were kind of doing these things. There's a history of doing these things, but it helps keep it fresh. It helps make it relevant, and it helps each generation kind of throw their voice into our tradition and keep it, but foundation in the same source, which makes a cohesive people. This is why we can have a book that's the foundation of a whole ethos, because there's this thing called Midrash that allows us to each generation to kind of throw their 2 cents and their value system into the whole, kind of what ethics and ethos of the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So we just had a couple people join us. So if you have questions for Matt, feel free to shoot them at us either right through the video or on Twitter, #Eli Talks. We'll be taking those live. And as I mentioned before, they may get answered in rap, depending on how things go.
If that's what you prefer, please let us know. It'd probably be a lot more concise and make more sense. I tend to not make sense when I use language normally, so
go for the rap, people. Yeah. Amazing. So building on that a little bit, I mean, I've heard, so there's this comedian, Aaron Freeman, who talks about the Torah, talks about Judaism being the world's biggest obsessive-compulsive book club, that we have one book, and we read it over and over, and then we read books on the books, and books on the books on the books. Right. And so it's a very textual, very intellectual, very literary tradition. So where does music come in all of this? Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship between music and Torah?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, it says in the Torah, like, teach your children these words in a song. So it's always been a pedagogic tool. Let's see. I'm going to take my glasses off because I'm looking at myself and I'm starting to get insecure. And they used to chant the Torah back in the day. If you read it, there's a natural rhythm to it, and there's trope. So there's already singing and music and kind of a chanting rhythmic element to it naturally. And I mean, it's the music in general is kind of like is close to the, Nietzsche said you couldn't be a philosopher if you weren't first a musician, because it's kind of, you're in touch with sentiments before they're given words. And so it allows you to kind of really get to your sentiments. When you're like trying to figure out a melody, you're using words to figure that out. You're kind of trying to find the vibrations of a sentiment before they have a word to it. And so it gets to kind of like the underlying sentiments before they were even given words. That's what I think music does, which is why it's such a powerful thing that the right melody, can make people cry. And that's just a strange thing. If it's like a spell. There's a little bit of an incantation or a spell element to it. So, and when you pray, you sing. But rap in particular has those elements. But you can say in a rap, in one song, what other genres take an album to say. Just because in rap, you're like, life is an act with more secrets than I even knew. It doesn't matter what you think, it only matters what you do. I'm tired these days, I'm getting up earlier. My eyes carry baggage, my Jew froze curlier. The patch on my pants for the lack of the cabbage is a problem I'm working on solving. Whereas in a song, it's like, how many roads must a man walk down? So in terms of just general, it has the musical element, but it also can pack, in my opinion, just in a lot of different ways, but in that way, it just it can pack a lot more information in a 3-minute song than I write songs as well, and a folk singer, but I mean, it didn't. I don't know. It seemed like the appropriate way to go about this was using rap, and there's an element of like rap also. The metric of quality for rap is authenticity. So when I'm doing it, or when we help students do it, we bring like a portable studio, study text, and the kids write their Bible raps, and we make a little music video with them. it's one thing to do a cerebral activity of studying a text, and then this is what I think. And that's kind of what we're doing in your own language. What do you think about this, or what is being said? So they put it down, but it's still in the head. But then when they have to go in front of their peers, and they know that the metric of quality is authenticity, to have to spit that, your spirit has to get behind those words. So now it goes from the mind to the spirit, and kind of those two meeting in the heart. And to me, that's what Torah is. Should we end it there? No.
Thanks, everybody. It's been great. That was beautiful, Matt. I mean, I'm tempted. Like, that was, yeah. I think you're really, there's something there, absolutely. Yeah. But tell me, I mean, this word authenticity, on the one hand, is really attractive, and on the one hand is really grating, kind of on my ears at least, because I feel like it gets thrown around and loses, ironically, I guess, loses its meaning in a lot of ways. So how do you gauge authenticity in a rap, especially?
That's a good question. I mean, I think all buzzwords tend to become embroiled by overuse. The phrase "keep it real."
Sure.
That's like the first law of rap, right? Which is like the first law of rap is whatever you're talking about or whatever you're spitting, it's coming from your heart. It's coming from what you really believe, and you're not just kind of like thinking of. It's such a space to talk about identity. Think about rap songs and how much it's like, this is where I'm from. This is what I went through. This is why I do what I do. This is who I respect. This is who I hate. I think you're whack. I think you're cool. I think that I have problems with this. I think I'm the best at that. It's very identity focused. Where like most other genres are like, I love you, baby. Oh yes, I do. Or it's like, the world is fantastic, or whatever. It's not this place where I'm not saying that it's not this place where you're constantly speaking about identity. In fact, the first thing, whereas in rap, you're constantly, basically, in my opinion, you're constantly advancing your identity with the words, and you have to kind of defend yourself as a person who's in hip hop that you're repping hip hop right. So there's a lot of different ways of having like quality control of authenticity, but that's kind of like people hear it. It kind of goes. People hear like, oh, that he's spitting it from the heart, or that his spirit's really behind those words, So it is a hard thing to kind of articulate what authenticity is, but at least you get a chance, even an opportunity to explore personas. So it's like, okay, write something where, if you're writing a rap about your relationship to Israel, it's one thing to write that, but to have to be like, I think this about Israel and something. So it's like your spirit's getting behind those words, and so they're and seeing if they feel right with it. And so that's just kind of a place to navigate and negotiate your authentic identity, and that, as Jewish educators, is kind of what we're doing beyond just transmitting information. It's edification. We're trying to instill something in the spirit.
So when you talk about rap being associated with very closely with identity, it seems like very much individual identity, sort of egocentric in a way, right? Not with the negative connotations, but just like centered on the self, right? So how do you take that and give it more a feeling of communal identity, or of peoplehood, or of we're all in this together with it? If for the most part rap tends to be about me, myself, and I, and where I came from.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of ways you can do. Like, there are some raps that are about issues of the world, but the way you relate to people is by speaking an inner truth, and other people, and it might turn a light bulb on of one of their inner truths. So if I'm like, I'm not white, I'm Jewish. Back when I rapped in high school, people told me that I'm tight for a white dude. What'd you tell them? I'm not white, I'm Jewish. Like, when I do that, it's very interesting to see who's like, oh, snap. That's what I think sometimes. Like, when I have to fill out those boxes, I'm always like, they're like white, Asian, African American. And it's like, well, where's Jewish? That's where they expect their check to be. So by articulating things that are kind of inner truths to yourself, people relate and kind of formulate a community. And specific to Bible raps, though, is I'm not talking about myself. That's why it's such an enjoyable enterprise. Well, I do. I have two albums. One is In the Beginning, 27 tracks from the Garden of
What?
Eden to Rabbi Akiva, all the way to Israel 2014. Like, whoa. And then the other one that's coming out is the Map Bar Mitzvah, which is a lot more eye focused.
Mhm.
Like I'm talking about myself and my relationship to things and Judaism in particular. But the Bible Raps is trying my best to kind of encounter um, the characters or the situations of these figures in the Bible, informed, and their identity that I construct is built upon not only the text but what the rabbis have kind of filled in that text to make to with past midrash, with past commentary, incorporating all that to create a full human being that's going through something relatable. So Abraham has this inner truth, and you try to elucidate that, and then by figuring it out or figuring out a way to talk about what Abraham's going through, and then people might relate to that or might see him in a more depth, with greater depth, So it's kind of like a visceral way or a vicarious way of being biblical.
Mm-hmm. Give me some examples of how that plays out. I mean, you've run workshops and given shows and all kinds of stuff all over the
Right.
country, all over the
Right.
world. So what's coming out of this bridge building to the glory of the text?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of situations where, that it's the first time that Jewish education has been cool
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of these kids. And, I always tell people that with Bible raps, like, my bar is not, I used to rap, like, just in normal world. And so my competition, like, was Lil Wayne and Eminem, and now it's like Hebrew school. No offense to all the great Hebrew school teachers, but like it's a different bar to have to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But there's hip hop is such a dominant culture in the youth that when they see that these two cultures, hip hop and Jewish identity and Jewish kind of textual interest, can like harmonize in one individual, I think you get a lot of people who never have been turned on to the text that like to explore it through this medium, and kind of because it's their language, and instead of doing thou shalt go thee, it's like in their own language.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so give me an example of a time when that's happened for you, when you've opened up the text and felt like you've made that connection, that
Right.
inner truth with another character.
Well, the example I have is going to be a little odd, but it's the woman Rachav in the Bible, and for me, like, there's a couple like love songs, that there's only 3 women on the Bible Raps album of the 27 tracks, because it's harder for me and to crack that kind of, to find that fissure into an inner identity. But I've so I did Rachav, Ruth, and Rachel. And with Rachav, I was Rachav for Purim in 2008, so I was already like, somehow like explored that a little bit. But I think, when she kind of I learned about her at Pardes, and kind of she's this incredible woman who's both like, she's the woman where the spies are sent into Jericho and to check out like if Jericho's right for attack by Joshua, and
Mm-hmm.
they go first to this brothel and they talk to the Mademoiselle, and Mademoiselle is Rachav, and so the rabbis ask like, why would they go to a brothel? And so the reason is why is because she's both looked as kind of like a prostitute who's just not even taken, not living on the outside in the wall, like not even taken as a full human, just kind of like, as a dog on society. So not even just like just a piece of meat to these people. But at the same time, she spends time with powerful people in compromising positions, literally and figuratively. And so there's some bed pillow talk, so she might know some inside information about what's happening on the inside. So that's one reason why the spies would go there. She's also known as the first convert, right, righteous convert in Midrash. They have her because she ends up going with the Israelites. She's like, I know you're in the text of the Torah, of the Tanakh. It's like, I know your God. Your God is the God heaven and earth and cares a little bit about us, which is like the ethical monotheistic equation. So she had the same, and she lives in a completely polytheistic society, so she had the same chidush, same new idea that Abraham had. So she's also a great philosopher or theologian. And then just to talk about her being objectified. So that's two inside ways of like talking about being the convert, and why would someone convert? What is this idea of coming in touch with, like bowing to the stars, praying to the stars, like the stars are the powerful things, and be like, wait, what controls the stars? And then like having this, how did this connection occur? So that's an interesting to explore thing. And then the first verse about like you can break it down like why the spies went there and what the inside information she can give. And then the third verse is about just being objectified as a woman. I know I look, or it's like, my dear, my fears, my tears, man, they plague me. Many men don't know my name, but they all call me baby. And lately I'm crazy, I'm living on the edge. I know my house is in a wall, but show my mind is on the ledge, because it is said everywhere I go that I'm a hoe, and I can't say no. I say show in the album, don't worry. Everywhere I go that I'm a hoe, and I can't say no, but deep inside of my heart they don't know I'm so much more. So when the king of Jericho sent soldiers to my door, the same two soldiers who came over for just the night before, so I can explore this idea, which I think of like complete and total objectification of a woman, and like what that does to her kind of inner soul, and this kind of weird not being taken as like an actual full human, and that kind of dual identity of like public persona and private subjective self. So in doing all that, it was just like, wow, this is such an incredible character. She's as smart as Abraham, and like, and the rabbis say like she's one of the 4 sexiest women in the history of mankind. So you got a little skirt the like hip hop kind of, I know I look good, I know I'm mad fly, I keep my clients coming, you don't need to ask why. It takes this one look, which you already took. I've been with the whatever. So you could that makes sense. Fortunately, like the Bible has plenty of misogyny, plenty of like sexiness, plenty of violence. And so it works very well with kind of a lot of commercial hip-hop, which covers similar topics. But yeah, that was one character that I really got to know and really kind of advanced my thinking about objectification of women and about what it means to kind of be in touch with Hashem, because I started from her point of view and then moved to where she ended up. It made me explore it, I think, better when I'm through writing than just kind of, it's another feedback loop, like a chavruta. Just my notepad can be a chavruta. I had a mystical experience or two as well while recording in the studio, but if you want to get into that, we could.
I don't think you can just drop that and then not follow up. You want to share a little bit of that, Matt?
All right, I will. Basically, like when you write a love song, and then like a year later, you're no longer in love with the woman, but you have to sing the song. You have to kind of like adopt that persona you used to have, so you can authentically sing the song again. So when I'm trying to adopt all these different personas, like Rachav, and then I go to Isaac, and then I go try to be Abraham in like a studio session, and I'm really trying to adopt these personas, my ego is being corralled like over here, then over there, then over here. So like my ego gets like this kind of wave element to where I get a view underneath the ego. And there I had a front row seat to my soul. And embedded in the tapestry of my soul were the little tiny glowing tidbits of being of my teachers. And I was like, whoa, that's in there. And they said they said a certain thing to me, and then I realized, like, if they have all that in their soul, right, then a little bit of their teachers in me. And it goes back to Sinai, and it made sense of the phrase "all Jews were at Sinai." That was the mystical experience. Now, none of my students have had that yet. I don't have any anecdotes about something.
Well, I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll see.
All right. Cool. So tell me a little bit about being a Jewish educator, and how that. We had a question from one of our viewers about sort of how does that impact the way that you think about your music and the way that you approach these characters in these songs?
Right. Well, we always, with at least with the in the beginning, which is kind of like 27 tracks that are just Bible or Talmudic figures or speaking to. I'm educators first. Like that's my first
Mm-hmm.
primary goal. So I'm really thinking like, how could this be used in a classroom, and trying to inform the lyrics not only by the text, like we have rap maps which show the actual line from the text and the lines from Tanakh that I'm referring to actually show the midrashic process, like this line and this line and this line and this line and this line are all from the text, and I filled in these other lines to make a narrative. So it's already embedded in the text, as well as like why I made in Cain and Abel, it's like mad at the Lord, he takes it out on Abel with that murder, Cain is willing and Abel. So it doesn't say in the text it doesn't say mad at the Lord, so he takes it out on Abel. I'm explaining why Cain killed Abel, because he was mad at the Lord, but he took it out on Abel. That's what Rashi said. So right there's a chance to kind of like talk about Rashi and talk about resentment and envy and Jewish ethics being your brother's keepers. So I'm always considering as many ways as possible that this can be used either to bolster a lesson plan or to like have a lesson plan kind of breathe through it, because then if they listen to it at home, then whatever lesson is used incorporating these songs are reinforced when they listen to it later. And studying Hebrew school notes at home is a rarity that I think we can pull off more than the average bear.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and I have one more question I'd like to throw at you, and then you're welcome to tell us a little bit more about what's coming next from you and from Bible Raps. But so if you were going to have a rap battle with any biblical character, who would you like to battle and why?
It's funny because I actually already did on In the Beginning, the Bible Raps album, where again, it helped me. There's the biblical Elijah the prophet, this guy we sing about after Havdalah, at Havdalah. He comes up a lot. He's an important dude, fascinating dude. But in the Bible, Elijah's like this kind of fanatic, firebranding, like just turned up, kills a bunch of people and crazy, like a little manic and just intense as can be. Whereas the rabbinic Elijah is this very humble. He goes around and humbles people. He's poor. He's chill. He's sweet. And so it's like trying to make sense of this being the same person, but having gone through a transition. And so, in the attempt to do that, the first verse of the Elijah is just what Elijah would spit, like, there is no peace till the gods compete, till you're on your knees like Hashem's unique, but you're already dead, lying to yourself, so before you all spread to anybody else, like the butter on the table, put you back on the shelf. And then the second verse, I talk about how, right before the song, I say, best Bible rapper alive, on the song before it, just end it with the Havdalah rap. And then on this song, I'm like, the second verse, which introduces the rabbinic Elijah, he comes and steps to me. It's like, once upon a rhyme, an MC stepped to me. He said, I heard you think you're the best Bible rapper alive. Humbled, I mumbled, well, there's less than 5. He said, your yarmulke implores me to please rap for ye. Now I am Elijah, the in much higher. Matt Bar, a bringer, I harbinger, messiahs. Hold, please. And there's like, a whole like, little, and he's like, sorry, I missed that line. The other line was His Highness. I see. So anyway, to bring that figure in, I battle him, and he humbles me to be like, you're not the best Bible rapper alive, which is what he does in like, rabbinic lore and Hasidic lore. He comes and humbles people who are like, who would make these grandiose kind of, very kind of ambitious, egocentric statements. So so I have battled, and it would probably be Elijah. But in all honesty, it'd be St. Paul, just between you
and me. I won't tell a soul.
We shouldn't get into that. That's a whole nother topic.
To be continued on that one. So tell us what's next. What's dropping next? What's happening?
Well, we got these 2 albums that are done. One's available. One I'm getting pressed as we speak. But the big move is this digital curriculum, which I'm really excited about because you can put the text up and annotate it. And so you put the text up, and then you can say, just as I used to have Torah wrap maps, I can say, I can put the text on this site, and then highlight a few words and say the reason why I did these words is from Psalms 11:12, and then you can also use multimedia to annotate things. So you can say have a picture with it. So like Tower of Babel, you can use like the Tower of Mordor for the last line when they're like, I look down at God's crown, resound, there is no one above me, and like explain why I said that because of something Rashi says, but have the picture be like the Tower of Mordor. So it embeds it in pop zeitgeist, you know what I mean? And then people can respond to that. So if they're like, oh, that's cool, so you can embed lesson plans in it. And I'm doing some things with like some Philadelphia classrooms where like we'll do a workshop, they'll do a song about like Israel, and then my network out in Israel like will have like some Israeli soldiers respond back. So it takes it out of the four walls, and they can be like, I really like what you said about Israel. By the way, over there is the Western Wall, and this is what my experience with it, and this is why I ended up made Aliyah when I was da-da-da. So it kind of can start these digital pen pals and like, get people to act, just if you do social justice, you can talk about it, but then to actually have someone who's on the front lines of social justice respond to you will also inspire the people who did this project. So the digital curriculum, there's going to be 38 songs up there, and we're going to use it in as many like ways as possible, and we're very, very excited about that. And then the stage show, which me and my buddy Sean are hopefully going to get on soon, will hopefully like be a Bible raps, pyrotechnic, multimedia, oh my goodness, what was that presentation, because we've been doing the same 6 songs for 6 years because that's what we're good at, so we don't work on it. But now we're going to work on it.
Amazing. Do it. Go forth. Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent and your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
I think it's awesome. I mean, I think we're living in an amazing time for Jewish music and for Jewish education, and it's really exciting to see the way that you've blended the two, and I wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you so much.
So with that, a huge thank you to everybody who viewed and who sent in questions. A pleasure to have you with us next week on Eli on Air. We're going to be speaking with Michael Hoffman about the relationship between Israel and America in the context of lone soldiers. These folks who are joining the Israeli army and are separated from their families because they're from other countries, and it's a really intense experience. I hope you'll join us for that conversation. But in the meantime, more shout-outs. Thank you to Joshua Venture Group for partnering on this series and for helping folks like Matt get their great work out into the world. Thank you to Esther K for hosting the digital conversation side of things. And we'll see you next week on air. And thanks again, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Bye.